During the Affordability Committee meeting last week at Barrie City Hall, 3 residents spoke against the proposed development at 121 and 131 Arda Road. The property owner plans to replace 2 single-detached homes with 19-unit 3-story townhouse development, including private road access, reduced setbacks, and landscaping buffers. Residents, however, raise concerns about excessive density, privacy issues due to reduced setbacks, and the 3-story height.
The proponent in this case has purchased a couple of properties on Arda Road and would have us believe that putting 19 homes in place of 2 represents gentle intensification. That's a 10-fold increase over the existing density. I submit to you that there's nothing gentle about it.
They also highlighted issues such as removal of matured trees, insufficient parking, increased traffic, and the development's impact on neighborhoods' low-density character. They call for scaling back the plan and preserving existing trees. Staff will evaluate and address these issues in a report expected in early 2025. The second zoning bylaw amendment for 282 King Street proposes a change to permit automotive sales and leasing. This application did not receive significant public concerns during meetings. Staff are reviewing compliance with planning policies and traffic impacts and are expected to approve the proposal. Following is our coverage of the meeting.
I will now call upon Daphne Gokcen of Innovative Planning Solutions, Inc. to provide the presentation concerning the zoning bylaw amendment application for 127 and 131 Arda Road, Barrie.
All right, good evening, committee members. Thank you so much for having me this evening. My name is Daphne Gokcen. I'm with Innovative Planning Solutions, and we are the planning consultants on this file. Also with me today is Mayor Dodd, who's the property owner and the applicant. So we're here tonight to present an application for a zoning bylaw amendment for properties at 127 and 131 Arda Road. This is my clicker. There we go. So the project site is on the south side of Arda, and it is currently 2 residential lots, each of which have a single-family detached house. In total, the lands are about 4,300 square meters, and it has about 50 meters of frontage along Arda. As mentioned, there's existing single-detached homes that have pretty large, long backyards, as you can see in this aerial image. This figure shows a little bit of the context in the area. It is a mixed area. It's mostly residential, mostly low density and medium density residential, but there is also some commercial and industrial uses as well in the area. What's important to note is that the green check marks, which are a little hard to see with the screen contracts, I apologize, represent all of the properties that either have existing medium density development or have been approved for that. So those are sites that generally have townhouse developments, which is what we are proposing. You can also see again that there are commercial plazas, places of worship, so it is sort of a mixed use neighborhood. Arda is an arterial road in the official plan, so there is permissions for greater intensification along arterial roads. This shows the current official plan and zoning bylaw for the site. So the official plan has it in the neighborhood area, and the current zoning bylaw has it as R1, the density. But just to note that the proposed third draft of the zoning bylaw amendment is for the NL3 zone, which does allow greater density than what is currently permitted. So this is our development concept here. So what we're proposing is 19 townhouse units fronting onto these private lanes that have access off of Arda. Each townhouse has its own driveway, which will have a parking space on it, and there's also a garage that could be used as a parking space as well. There's also 5 visitor parking spaces, 2 of which are barrier-free, and there's an outdoor amenity space. This has a little bit more detail on the proposed development. So there are 3 stories that are proposed. It's 24 total parking spaces is what's in the application, but those garage parking spaces are not allowed to be counted as tandem parking is not allowed in this zone. So it's actually more parking realistically than what we have to put in the application. And there is a 0.5 meter road widening and also landscape buffers along all of the property lines, which are from like 3 to 5 meters, depending on the property line. So what we're requesting, as I alluded to earlier, is a zoning bylaw amendment to change the zoning from R1 to the RM2 with special provisions. So this has a list of all of the special provisions that we're requesting. Again, as I mentioned, the current zoning bylaw, as you all know, is from 2009. Newer policy documents encourage more efficient development, encourage more intensification. And so this proposed development is meant to reflect the policy documents that we've seen from the city, both the new official plan that's in place and also the draft zoning bylaw that's been published. And in fact, if the draft bylaw were in effect today, we wouldn't need these provisions because all of these provisions would actually be permitted in this zone. Just to go through them, we're requesting a slight increase in density. It's 40 that's allowed. We're asking for 45.2 units per hectare. It's important to note that we are below the maximum lot coverage and also above the minimum landscaped open space. So even though we're slightly above the allowed density, the site shouldn't feel too crowded. We're also requesting a reduction in the front yard setback and also the rear yard setback. With the front yard setback, it actually currently doesn't meet the 7 meters. The current homes are about 5 meters. With the road widening as well, we're losing half a meter there as well. And with the rear yard setback, we're requesting 5 meters in lieu of 7 meters, which aligns with what is in the draft zoning bylaw. And then finally, the parking, as I mentioned, we have to say 24 parking spaces because tandem spaces are not allowed, but there's actually 2 spaces per unit. And the number of spaces we're proposing is what would be the required number of spaces per the draft zoning bylaw, which only requires 1 space per unit. So we did hold a neighborhood meeting back on July 25th. We had a number of people in attendance. 4 of them provided comments. Generally, the concerns were the density. There was some concern about stormwater management. There was a slight slope on the site. Concerns about the parking, the height, about trees and vegetation, traffic and privacy. We also received an email from a neighbor prior to the meeting who could not attend the meeting. That neighbor expressed concerns about density, setbacks, and parking, and also about just generally setting a precedent in this area for more intense development. There's a greater detailed response to these comments in the planning justification report, but in general, as I mentioned, the proposed height, density, setbacks, and parking align with what we see as the direction of City Council in the new official plan and the draft zoning bylaw. Arda is an arterial road. As I showed on the previous slide, there is a precedent for this type of development in the area, and so we feel that it is appropriate. There is some concern with the removal of some mature trees on the properties. However, our arborist found that many of those trees are in poor health and need to be removed for safety anyways. And there will be new trees planted throughout the site. A landscape plan was provided with the submission. So again, many of these concerns are addressed in the technical reports included with the submission. So here's a list of those technical reports that were included, just for your reference, and sure, we could pull up any of them if necessary. So in general, just to reiterate this again, we feel this project site is an area that has been identified for intensification and redevelopment at an appropriate scale. We feel that townhouse development is an appropriate scale of development. It reflects policy documents. It reflects what has happened in the neighborhood, and also reflects that this is a neighborhood with a mix of uses and densities. The current use is really an inefficient use of the property, and the net increase of 17 dwelling units will help contribute to the city's demand for more housing, while also providing a housing type in townhouses that's generally more affordable and more accessible to residents in the city. In conclusion, it's a zoning bylaw amendment to allow townhouse developments, and we believe that it's consistent with the policies of the city and province. So I look forward to hearing your comments and questions. Thank you.
Thank you. I will now call upon Riley Anderson, planner from the Development Services Department, to provide an update on the status of the application.
Good evening, Chair Nixon and members of Affordability Committee. In addition to the presentation by the applicant's planning consultant, a memorandum was provided to the committee to describe the application. Planning staff are currently completing the technical review process associated with the application. The zoning bylaw amendment application proposes to amend the residential single-detached dwelling first density zone that applies to the subject lands to residential multiple dwelling second density with site-specific provisions to facilitate the development of 19 three-story townhouse units on an internal private roadway. A neighborhood meeting for the application was held virtually through the Zoom platform on July 25th, 2024. There were 18 attendees, including Ward 6 Councillor Nigussie, the applicant's consultants, and planning staff. Feedback was provided related to the following: concerns with increased density on site and the number of proposed units, protection and preservation of existing mature boundary trees, concerns about the cumulative effects of several townhome projects being developed in the surrounding area, perceived loss of property value, concerns about the proposed height of the development, and concerns regarding parking and potential increased demand for on-street parking. The application is currently under review by planning staff, the city's technical review departments, and external agencies. The primary planning and land use matters being considered by staff at this time include compliance with provincial planning policy and the city's official plan, justification and the appropriateness of the proposed amendment and the requested site-specific provisions, efficient use of land and resources that optimize the use of existing services and infrastructure, integration of the proposed development in the surrounding residential area, including the preservation of private and shared boundary vegetation, impacts that the development may have on traffic operations in the area, and compliance with city standards. A detailed analysis of these considerations and site-specific zoning provisions will be provided when a staff report is brought forward for General Committee's consideration. Staff will continue to work with the applicant to address feedback received through the public consultation process, as well as comments raised through the analysis of these applications by technical staff and our agency partners. A staff report providing a recommendation to General Committee on the proposed zoning bylaw amendment application is anticipated to be brought forward in early 2025. All submission materials and key dates associated with the subject application, along with my contact information, are available for viewing online on the city's proposed development webpage under Ward 6. Thank you, Chair Nixon, members of Affordability Committee, and the public for your attention.
Thank you. Moving to public comments, we'll start with in-person. We have one pre-registered to speak in person. Mr. Smith, yes. Please approach the podium and begin by stating your first, last name, and address for the record. Thank you.
Good evening, committee. My name is Brian Smith. I live at 5 Dove Crescent. I spoke to this committee a few weeks ago regarding the importance of aligning the city's new proposed zoning bylaw with our urban design guidelines. I was pleased to hear that Mayor Nuttall shares some of those same concerns. The reason I mentioned that regarding the Arda Road bylaw amendment tonight is that it's a prime example of what can go wrong when established policies and guidelines are ignored. The proponent in this case has purchased a couple of properties on Arda Road and would have us believe that putting 19 homes in place of 2 represents gentle intensification. That's a 10-fold increase over the existing density. I submit to you that there's nothing gentle about it. Not only are they asking to rezone from R1 to RM2, the property is too small to fit the proposed buildings without a number of substantial special provisions. For example, both front and rear setbacks are to be reduced by almost 30% from 7 meters to 5 meters, and the gross floor area exceeds the 60% limit by 25%. In the proponent's own planning justification report, they acknowledge that the site is, and I quote, limited in size, but that the proposed project will not impact any other properties. The property will be landscaped to ensure privacy and aesthetics are maintained. How do you do that with a 3-story building towering over existing homes and a 5-meter setback? As it stands, the proposal does not fit and will extremely have negative impacts on the character of the surrounding neighborhood. Perhaps more importantly, by approving this non-compliant plan, it will open the door for additional non-compliant cookie-cutter developments all the way along the south side of Arda Road between Patterson and Ferndale. The end result of that would be enormous intensification relative to the surrounding area. Council must stop this piecemeal approach to infill development and adopt a big picture perspective. Mayor Nuttall says he believes in preserving the character of our city, but it's going to take a concerted effort on the part of staff, council, and developers to ensure that that happens. I want to get back to my overriding premise of my objection tonight. The city has a mandate to develop sound planning policy based on guiding principles so that citizens and developers alike know what the planning objectives are and understand the rules that will ensure that those objectives are met. Council needs to do a much better job of sticking to its principles and enforcing compliance to our planning parameters. Failing to do so undermines the integrity of our newly minted official plan and diminishes the credibility of everyone involved. I know that infill development is a natural evolution for a growing city like ours, but our official plan states in Section 6 that new development in built-out neighborhoods must respect the scale, height, massing, lot pattern, building type, orientation, character, form, and planned function of the immediate local area. Even the proponent in their planning justification report notes that the areas north, south, east, and west of the subject lands are all low-density residential homes. Why is it that infill developments can't be done in a creative way that conforms 100% with our bylaws and doesn't destroy the character of our existing neighborhoods? If Mayor Nuttall and Council are truly committed to preserving the character of our city, then they need to work with the citizens to ensure that infill developments really do align with existing neighborhoods and that the words gentle intensification actually mean something. The committee should unequivocally send this back to the proponent to develop a plan that is 100% compliant with policy and respects the character of our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving to virtual, I believe we have two pre-registered people. Do we have them both on the line? Okay, I will ask Luciano Garcia to begin. And please state your first, last name and address for the record, please.
Yes, hi there. My name is Luciano Garcia. My property is at the rear of the site. It's 214 Patterson Road. I'd like to thank everyone for the opportunity to voice my concerns regarding this proposed zoning amendment and the townhouse development. I'd like to start out by stating that I am opposed to the zoning bylaw amendment. After reviewing the plans, I feel that several key issues, particularly regarding privacy, which were brought up during the neighborhood meeting, have not been adequately addressed. Firstly, the landscape plan indicates the planting of 4 English oak trees, which will be between 12 to 16 feet tall across the rear bordering property line. This height and quantity will not provide sufficient privacy when 7 32-foot tall townhouses are placed within just 5 meters of the rear property line. The proposed trees are simply too small and sparse to create a meaningful barrier against such a large structure that's being proposed. Furthermore, window treatments have been mentioned as a privacy solution, but there has been no further explanation of how these would effectively address privacy concerns in the long term. Window treatments are not a permanent solution, as future owners can provide or replace windows with non-treated glass or choose to open them entirely, which would again compromise privacy. Additionally, I've seen that there are eastern white cedars on my side of the rear bordering property line, which is shown on the tree preservation plan and marked for removal. I strongly oppose the removal of these trees as it further adds to my privacy concerns. The loss of these trees, combined with only the 4 small oak trees being added, and the proposed 2-meter wood fence will not provide adequate privacy. And comparing this site to the development at 199 Arda Road, which is actually one of the sites that's mentioned and shown as being a townhouse development in the presentation there, it's important to note the significant differences between the two sites there. The 199 Arda Road site, it's surrounded by a commercial land and it's situated near a major intersection, neither of which applies to this development. Additionally, that site is much larger, features a 12-meter rear setback with a comprehensive privacy landscape screen, while the current proposal at this site suggests a much smaller 5-meter rear setback with only a few trees as privacy. Given these concerns, I'd like to propose that the rear row of townhouses be removed and that the rear setback be increased to 12 meter to provide an adequate landscape privacy screen, as was done on the other townhouse development. This change would not only improve privacy, but also address overcrowding and eliminate the need for many of the requested zoning provisions. It would still allow for 12 units, a significant increase compared to the current 2 dwellings, while ensuring that the development is more appropriate for the size of this site and will meet most of the concerns brought up by the neighborhood. The sheer fact that all these provisions are being requested shows that the proposed development is too large for this site. I thank everybody for letting me express my concerns.
Thank you. Do we have Harjinder Singh? Yes, okay. Go ahead and please begin by stating your first, last name and address for the record.
Hi there, my name is Harjinder Singh. I live on 212 Patterson Road. I've lived on this address for approximately 4 years now. And the main reason for us to even purchase or move into this address was it is a nice, quiet neighborhood. We have nice trees in the back. And with this plan here, it changes everything. Looking at the plan itself, we see they're trying to fit in 19 homes instead of 2. It's really tight. They say there's enough parking. There's not going to be enough parking because there's 4 parking for 19 houses. No, in these houses, you can barely fit our car in the garage anyway. So, and then we also have these houses at 3 stories high. So they oversee, my property, my neighbor's property. It's our privacy gets ruined. And the whole reason why we moved to this neighborhood was to get privacy and have so that my main concern is privacy, overcrowding, and the setbacks from the fences and stuff, as mentioned by the gentleman before. If you could keep that in mind and if you could correct the plan or change it to, to help the neighbors feel, it shouldn't impact our life so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else waiting? Carl? No? Okay, thank you. Do we have any other members of the public here that would like to address the committee? I don't believe so. Carl, do we have Councillor Nigussie on the line? Yes, Councillor Nigussie, do you have any questions of clarification? Oh, there you are.
Thank you, Chair Nixon. Good evening, members of committee. I have a few questions for staff, probably to Ms. Banfield. So I need just some clarification. What is the road classification of this portion of Arda Road, Ms. Banfield?
Through you, Chair Nixon, to Councillor Nigussie, it is an arterial road.
So are arterial roads intend to support infill developments? And can you elaborate that as well?
Through you, Chair Nixon, to Councillor Nigussie. So arterial roads would be road networks that you would expect to see some intensification happen over time, yes.
Okay. So my other question is, when is the staff report on this matter expected to return to council?
Through you, Chair Nixon, to Councillor Nigussie. So this is early in the process, this public meeting, as always, and so there are comments not only from our technical agencies, but also from the public that we would have to work with the applicant to resolve and review. That may involve changes to the plans or studies or reports that have been submitted. At this point, we're hoping that it would be sometime, obviously, in 2025. Anybody that has come this evening and has spoken, staff would ensure that they knew when this report was coming back to council for consideration.
Okay. Ms. Banfield, let's assume for a second, if the city council vote against to this proposal, or or the developer wasn't successful to getting approved for this zoning change through this application, under the latest draft of the incoming zoning bylaw, would the owner of this property be able to either develop them without any public consultation, or if they meet a few zoning standard variations, would they just be able to skip the public consultation process by going to the committee of adjustment only?
Through you, Chair Nixon, to Councillor Nigussie. So we would always evaluate the application based on the zoning bylaw that's applicable at this time, which is the old zoning bylaw. But thinking about the new zoning bylaw, for example, there would be some changes. There are some changes proposed to that would reduce the number of special provisions for this property in the future if they came forward for, and like as an example, the gross floor area maximum that there's an amendment for tonight, they wouldn't, that's not going to be a standard in the new zoning bylaw. Now that doesn't mean that the project still could proceed without any consultation. It could maybe need a minor variance, which also is a public process. But it does look like the new zoning bylaw would reduce the number of variances that would be required to move forward with this application.
Thank you, Ms. Benfield. Chair Nixon, I would like to say thank you to our Ward 6 resident, Mr. Smith, Mr. Garcia, and Mr. Singh for joining us tonight and sharing their thought and concern with this committee. I really appreciate for your active participation in our community. Chair Nixon, at this point, I have no additional comments to make until the staff report is completed. So thank you again.
Thank you. If anyone has any further written comments, you can submit them to Riley Anderson in the Development Services Department at riley.anderson@barrie.ca. There is one advisory committee report to be received and one recommendation. 6.1, the report of the Heritage Barrie Committee dated November 26, 2024. The Heritage Barrie Committee report dated November 26, 2024 contains one recommendation for the committee to consider, which is HB1, Doors Open Barrie. Does a member of committee wish to put the motion on the floor?
So moved, Chair.
Thank you. As this motion is on the floor, are there any questions from members of the committee? Councillor Harris.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Nixon. I had one question. I was just wondering, as it relates to the direction I'm trying to find, maybe through you, I'm not sure. Well, Ms. Schlichter's here. If that's the appropriate person, maybe I'll start there. As it relates to investigating the feasibility of including opening doors as a city-initiated event, what would that likely entitle for us? I know Heritage has supported, promoted open doors for several years, but I'm not sure. Is this something that we would need a motion to do if the city wanted to be involved in this, or is it something that would require this type of direction?
Through you, Chair, to Councillor Harris, we do believe we need council direction to pursue it, just given that the resource being allocated to deliver it would be moving to city staff. We've had some preliminary conversation. Our communications department bears a load. We've supported in some ways, but certainly it is it could be considered an event, so recreation and culture. So there's a little bit of navigating internally to determine how we could best support this from a staff perspective and staff initiated.
Okay, thank you. Maybe one follow-up, Chair Nixon. Again, Ms. Schlichter, is it something that, so it's not news, it's not new on the radar. Would this be an event that you've been aware of, monitored, and I don't know if it's fair to ask, but it's not been a city-initiated event? Is that because it's been seen not to be necessary to do that as a city-initiated event?
Through you, Chair Nixon, to Councillor Harris. I don't have the history to speak to that in any factual way. Last year, I think, was the first year that the Heritage Committee took it on after a bit of a hiatus or working directly with Simcoe County. We provided a little bit of support as it happened pre-Culture Days. Again, I can't speak too much for Access Barrie, but Communications provides some support to that regard. So we would look at it, if we were to look at it, we would look at it as part of Culture Days program. We think that there's potentially some fit, but we would need to do a little more exploration.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, are there any questions from members of council in attendance? Councillor Rima.
Thank you, Chair Nixon. Just following up on Councillor Harris's questions, maybe I can shed a bit more light on it. Open Doors has been run by the County of Simcoe for many years. Last year was the first year that the city ran it. And when I say the city, it was Heritage Barrie that actually did the running of it, with some great support from comms especially, and also from Ms. Schlichter's department. Excuse me. So the committee has done all the base work, like we have all the templates and all the pieces of paper that need to be done, and we have a list of Open Doors of people that are interested in doing Open Doors and did it this year. It was quite a different experience when the city ran it versus county. We had something like 1,000 people involved in it that came to Open Doors, and it was something. I think we had eight places in the downtown area primarily, but not exclusively. Now, this was quite an undertaking by Heritage Barrie, and I don't think that it's something that is sustainable in the long run if we don't hand it over to staff to have them be the spark plug behind it. Certainly the committee is committed to being involved, but in order to have something that is really successful year after year, I think we need to have some more staff involvement and staff leadership in it. I don't think that, now that it's set up, it's not a major piece of work, but it does require some work. And that's why the committee passed this motion and would ask this committee to pass it as well.
Thank you. Okay. Well, we will now vote on it. All in favor? Carried. Okay. As there are no reports of officers or items for discussion, that brings us to adjournment at 6:41, and this concludes the Affordability Committee meeting. Thank you.
That was the update from the Affordability Committee meeting. Thank you for watching.